allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item number 3. Georgie, will you take a roll call, please?
Councilmember Garola. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Villaseñor.
Here.
Mayor Austin.
Here.
Councilmember Brogy.
Here.
Councilmember Mendez.
Here. Okay, going to move on to item number 4, approval agenda. Can I have approval?
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we're going to move on to presentations. Search and rescue presentation by, I assume, Rick Neal and
Scott Gillis.
Scott Gillis, search and rescue.
Hello, good evening, Mayor, City Council. So tonight we're representing the Fillmore Search and Rescue Team, which has operated in Fillmore since 1946, arguably one of the oldest search and rescue teams in the state. So recently the team had some challenge coins made, and we're really proud of what they represent, and we just wanted to drop some off and share that with you guys.
I'll add it to my police collection.
There you go.
Thank you.
You got it. Thanks, guys. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to public comments.
Want to ask about it? Okay.
We don't have any public speakers, so we're going to move on to item number, but they were 9A. They're all 9A. They're all 9A. Okay, so we don't have any public comments. We're going to move it on to number 7, City Council reports, recommendations, and comments. Open up to council.
If no one else has anything, Mayor, if I can go for a couple of minutes and give an update on a meeting I went to last week. Every city and in the county was invited to go to a meeting last week on fentanyl. It was a fentanyl town hall called Facing Down Fentanyl. It was really well attended. There was our Sheriff Jim Fryhoff was there, our District Attorney Eric Nazarenko, our Dr. Levin, who's our public health officer. Also, I'm slipping on her name, but our behavioral health lead person, and our medical examiner. So it was a really top-notch panel of the leaders in the county, and really to come together to reinforce the fact to community leaders, to those in government, in education, in healthcare, all different sectors, the importance of understanding what a terrible crisis we're in with fentanyl here in Ventura County. And so they wanted for folks to relay the message, and there's sort of a top 5 things to know about fentanyl, and if I'll read them, and I'll read them also in Spanish afterwards, just so that it's for those that are watching. First thing, fentanyl is an extremely potent synthetic drug. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be deadly. That is Lincoln's head on a penny or the tip of a pencil. That's how much we're talking about. It's added to many drugs like meth, cocaine, and ecstasy. You cannot see it, you cannot smell it, you cannot taste it. Fake pills look like the real thing. Fentanyl can be in any drug not prescribed for you. It's sold on social media, and it's easy to get via social media. People are thinking that they are getting OxyContin, that they're getting Xanax or Adderall, or more, or different ones. Teens also may have more, this is what I want to reinforce. Teens may have more than one social media account on a platform. They have one that they share with their parents, perhaps, and also perhaps maybe one that's private. Also, there's these common emojis, like a pill emoji or a candy bar or a van, and these are often commonly used in buying these kind of street drugs. The fourth thing is overdose can happen quickly. They wanted to really enforce that like that. An OD slows breathing and can lead to death. Even people who are longtime users can overdose, especially if they've had a period of not using, and how particularly tragic for those who maybe have been doing well and then they relapse and can possibly die on their first use of that drug after not using it for some time. Mixing of drugs also increases the risk of overdose. And of course, naloxone saves lives. Naloxone is a safe and legal antidote to reverse opioid overdose, and you can obtain it. You can call a number. It's 1-800-667-NO-OD. Again, I'm sorry. Let me change that number. I read it wrong. It's 1-805-667-NO-OD or 805-667-6663. You can also find locations to get naloxone at venturacountyresponse.org/naloxone. And I'm hoping, Erika, that maybe we could put this information on the website and share it on social media. I'll send you all the information on it, and you can learn more about it. Another thing they really wanted to emphasize that really struck with me is that we live in a time now where there is no safe use of recreational drugs. I'll just say that again, where there is no safe use of recreational drugs. In the past, people have been able to pop a pill like any of the ones that I mentioned, or be a recreational drug user, but it's not that way anymore. It's deadly. So I just really want to emphasize that and share that information. And I'll quickly say these in Spanish. El fentanilo no es una droga sintética, es una droga sintética extremadamente potente. 2 miligramos de fentanilo puede ser mortales. La cabeza de Lincoln en una moneda de 1 centavo, una punta de un lápiz. Se agrega a muchas drogas como metanfetamina, cocaína y éxtasis. No puedo verlo, olerlo ni saborearlo. Las pastillas falsas parecen reales. El fentanilo puede encontrarse en cualquier medicamento y no se hayan recetado. Se vende en las redes sociales, son fáciles de conseguir a través de las redes sociales. Las personas pueden pensar que están tomando pastillas reales como Oxycontin, Xanax o Adderall. Los adolescentes pueden tener más de una cuenta de redes sociales en una plataforma, una que comparten con sus padres y otra privada. La sobredosis puede ocurrir rápidamente. Una sobredosis ralentiza la respiración y puede provocar la muerte. Incluso las personas que consumen desde hace mucho tiempo pueden sufrir una sobredosis, especialmente después de un periodo sin consumir. Mezclar drogas aumenta el riesgo de sobredosis. La naloxona salva vidas. La naloxona es un antídoto seguro y legal y puede revertir la sobredosis de opioides. Y puede llamar a 1-805-667-NOOD. Okay, thank you very much. And one more thing I just want to say too about people maybe trying to get drugs off the internet. And oftentimes in our communities, it might be people who don't have health insurance, or they're, could be construction workers, maybe dealing with back pain, dealing with some chronic illnesses that they're like, well, you know what, I'll just try and get it off the internet, or oftentimes too, I'll go to a pharmacy in Mexico. I've read the recent stories, and I think probably a lot of people may be aware that there's been studies, of looking at drugs from Mexico. These are drugs that come from pharmacies in Mexico that have fentanyl. So please understand that only if a doctor prescribes it and you receive it from that doctor prescription are those drugs okay. And anything else you get may be laced with fentanyl. It's very likely. Thanks. Just want to share that.
Any other council members have anything?
I actually do have one thing. Dave, I was curious if you could talk a little bit about the policy for park closures. I know we had a recent forecasted rain event, and our Public Works Department made the right choice to make a decision rather than just kind of leave it out in the open. But maybe like how we plan to tighten that up. And I know all the members who had reservations were notified, but just maybe a public comment on how we're tightening that process up.
Yeah, if we see another major weather event coming in, we'll do what we did this time. We'll notify the individual groups that it might be closed, and they will have our staff the following day. If it's raining, then we'll close the parks down. just check out, make sure the weather is rain, shut the parks down. If it's not rain, we'll keep them open, but we'll notify the groups beforehand that they may shut down depending on the weather situation.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate people's inputs and comments that weekend, but I think it was quickly people understood that we're trying to preserve the life of our parks, and when they're used during rain events, it can cause long-term damage that takes a long time to recover from. So thank you, Troy, for making a decision. Appreciate it.
Any other comments, council? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to number 8, consent calendar. I'm going to go ahead and pull 8B, the minutes. So it's consent calendar with only 8A. So I'll look for a motion to approve.
All right, so moved.
Second.
So a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, move on to item 9A, consideration of a resolution of the intent to transition from at-large to district-based elections.
I'll be presenting this item tonight, Mr. Mayor. The City Council is asked to approve Resolution 233964, a resolution of intention to switch from at-large to district elections pursuant to Election Code 10010 and authorizing the appropriation of $42,000 from general fund reserves for contract services. The City of Fillmore currently elects its city council members at large. That means everyone in the city votes for the seats that are open for city councils, regardless of where the candidate resides. However, on August 26, 2023, the city received a letter from Attorney Jason Dominguez of Driven PC demanding that the city convert from at-large to district-based electoral system. This letter was sent, as is required by the law, on behalf of a resident of the city who is identified as a member of a protected class who's harmed by the current at-large system. Mr. Dominguez and his client demand that the city begin the process of changing its system to a system of from a system of at-large elections to district-based elections, and threaten to sue the city if we don't do so. Under a district-based system of elections, the city would be divided into geographic districts of either 5 or 7 districts, and the council candidates can only run for the seat in which they live. And then the voters only within that district would vote for that candidate. Unfortunately, my office is not aware of any city or other public agency in California that has successfully defended against one of these demands to switch to districts. And often cities or counties, healthcare districts, school districts start to resist and end up settling for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars against the person who demanded that they switch to districts. It's currently believed that approximately 200 of the 482 cities now elect their city councils by district elections, as well as a number of other California public agencies. Many of these are because they were sued or threatened to be sued under the California Voting Rights Act. There is a safe harbor under the California Voting Rights Act, and we're within that period right now. When you receive a letter demanding that you switch to district elections, there's a 45-day window to adopt a resolution of intention. We're at the end of that period tonight, and we're asking you to consider adopting the resolution of intention. If that is done, then we have a 90-day safe harbor provision in which the city council can entertain the process to adopt a map. If the council is able to conduct the required 5 public hearings and adopt a map within that window, we cannot be sued, and all we would have to pay the person who sent the letter demanding that we switch to districts is about $34,000. Under the statute, it's $30,000, but it indexes up over time. So now it would be about $34,000 or $35,000. If we are unable, if we either don't adopt the resolution of intention tonight, or whether we do or don't, and don't adopt a map within 90 days from now, we won't be in the safe harbor provision, and we can be sued by this person as well as other people alleging that we're violating the California Voting Rights Act. So what's before you tonight is this resolution 23-3964. It outlines first the city's intention to switch to districts, as well as the process. The process first, as I mentioned, there are 5 public hearings. The first 2 public hearings happen before anyone starts talking about maps. The district, and the next item on the agenda is to hire a consultant that would help us navigate the complex laws about creating the districts. And so the first 2 meetings would be a lot of that consultant educating the council and the public on what is to be considered when starting to design maps. And then at the 3rd meeting, those 2 meetings have to happen within 30 days. And then after that, you need to have the next set of public hearings where you can start considering maps. And anytime there are proposed maps, so after the 3rd hearing, if we are able to start coming up with maps, then we need to post those on the website at least 7 days before we can talk about them at a subsequent hearing. So there is attached to the staff report a proposed schedule that would allow us to have the required 5 public hearings and stay within the safe harbor provision if the council moves forward and adopts this resolution of intention tonight. I know it's confusing, I know it's a lot, so I'm available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you probably answered this in your comments, but just for clarification, we're in that first 45-day period, and then we have 90 days to actually come up with a map. But if we move forward with this now and on this resolution, then if we don't come up with a map that we're happy with, or we just, for whatever reason, we decide to not go forward with this process, and now we're beyond the safeguard period, I'm assuming we would then get sued.
I mean, they threatened that they would sue us. I don't, it's my understanding that this person who wrote the letter hasn't sued public agencies before because they've complied. So I don't know that, I can't guarantee that we would be sued, but it seems like.
I mean, but based on what they're stating here, then they would have that ability to sue us.
Right.
And then we would end up forking out that much more money. I mean, what's frustrating, I know other cities are dealing with this and have dealt with it, but when we see these firms, just simply by sending a letter threatening a lawsuit to change the way that we're doing business in our own community, and the only way to get them to not sue us so that we're not, spending a huge amount of money, sometimes into the millions. I think Santa Clarita paid over $1 million. Then we can get out of doing that by simply writing a check for $34,000 to the firm or to the attorney who's threatening to file the suit. It
Writing a one-page letter.
infuriates me.
Yeah, I spent a bunch of time talking to him on the phone and trying to explain how small Fillmore, he apparently lost in Santa Barbara and thought that that he would have prevailed if there had been districts. And so that's why he says he's an advocate for districts. And so I tried explaining how different Santa Barbara is to Fillmore, and that we only have 16,000 people. And Erica was able to get the voting information, and I was able to explain to him, if we have 5 voting districts, that means we're going to have about 750 people, 800 people per district deciding who's on council versus like almost 4,000 people.
Right.
And, that seems very few, and some districts might have a hard time finding candidates because they're so small. And he just kept saying things that didn't apply to Fillmore, like, well, then the chamber needs to train people up, and city staff need to train people up. And, I explained how we don't have a chamber because we're too small, and it's dissolved, and he had no idea. And he just kept thinking that it'll be in the best interests of Fillmore, and hopefully it will be if that's the decision of the council. But right now, it is a scary proposition because it's very unknown and very different.
You may have alluded to a question I was going to ask about if somebody or if one of the districts goes unfilled in an election cycle, what happens then?
The council appoints,
Okay.
but you can only do that, I believe, in 2 districts. So have appointed people in 2 districts. So if there are 3 districts where it's unfilled, I'm not sure what would happen. It's unclear.
Okay. And that would presumably be after some of those those districts are filled, it would be after the election, then.
And the seat is considered vacated because that person is never represented, then the council would appoint from within that district if they could find someone willing to serve who hadn't decided to run.
Right.
So it can be really tricky. In cities much bigger than this, they've had trouble finding people in some of the districts.
Right. One of my other questions, you mentioned the proposed solution of potentially 5 or 7 districts. Are there other options of like a 4-district plus a mayor?
There could be 4 with a generally elected mayor is
Okay.
the other option, yeah.
Gotcha.
And when do we decide when we're going to do 5 or 4?
Uh,
When do we decide when we're going to choose 5 or 4 districts?
I think you would really hone in on, the consultant will talk you through all that, but I think at the either at the second meeting, probably at the second meeting, you'll start giving the consultant very specific direction about what you're thinking about districts and maps. And at that point, you could either dial in on one or say, we'd like to see maps for maybe 2 of the 3 options, and then the consultant will prepare the maps that will be reviewed at the 3rd hearing.
Okay.
But by then you really need to dial in because you'll want to be able to talk amongst yourselves about the maps, plus get input from the public, and members of the public might also be proposing alternate maps that need to be considered. And so it'll be complicated and much easier if everyone's talking about at least the same number of districts.
And when we come up with the maps, will they be made available to the public to review?
Yes,
Before? Okay.
they'll be on the website and they'll be published so that the public they have to be available at least 7 days before a public hearing to give the public adequate opportunity. And it'll include data too. There are a lot of rules about trying to have them as equal in size as possible, but there are all kinds of different considerations. And so some of that data that's relevant to determining the size of the districts will be available too.
Thank you.
Because people will come in with maps that they think sound great, but like the populations are very different, and so it won't work.
Yeah, that was my other question I was going to ask, Tiffany, if this online tool for residents can make their own map, does that also, well, maybe, I don't know if it has to be answered now, but would it help with all that data that certain districts have to have these certain criteria? Is that factored in, or like you said, they can just come up with a map that really
I mean, it depends. It's really complicated, and it depends on how well the people understand what the map is telling them and how to play with it. One of my other clients got a letter demanding that they switch districts during COVID, and so we went through this process, and they used the same consultant, and they used that software, and members of the public used the software to draw the maps, but they didn't understand the other information about it, so none of their maps were legal. They were just looking at geographic boundaries mostly and where they thought the district should be, but they were way off in population and other things.
Okay, thank you.
So the California Voting Rights Act doesn't claim that at-large voting is inherently illegal, correct? And so what if
It kind of implies it,
but not explicitly?
but not excessively.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what would prevent, or would there be anything that would prevent the city, if there were major issues with district voting, to decide to go back to at-large?
I mean, yeah, you would get sued. It's really, really complicated, and I don't know how many people have been following the Santa Monica case. Santa Monica stood up to a challenge, and their case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court just a few months ago sent it back to the Court of Appeal, which is probably going to send it back to the trial court to make different findings, because they said there's no way we could have, with our demographics, we couldn't have created a district that would have had a majority minority, and so there's no benefit to minorities by switching to districts. And the court kind of went off on a different tangent, and so they said it's unclear, and they sent it back. But allegedly, they spent more than $20 million to get to this point of fighting it. And so that's why most cities just give in and say, we'll do it, because they don't have that kind of reserve to fight. I mean, I do think because 80 to 85% of our population is the minority, that arguably we would have a good case to fight if we had an extra $20+ million, but we don't. But if the law changed, it could be possible to switch back.
That was actually my next question, because I'm not super familiar, but did read about, there might be another city that has a case just challenging the legality of the CVRA. Do you have?
I mean,
any
there are
knowledge of that?
constantly a lot, I mean, I think my office has like 3 clients involved in litigation under the CVRA right now. I think there's constantly a lot of litigation, and there are people trying to propose legislation. Some people have talked about a threshold of like a city under $30,000 or a public agency under 30,000 voters shouldn't be compelled to switch, and different things, but those carve-outs don't exist yet, and no one's carried that flag yet to even write the legislation. But it could change. It's constantly changing. We'll hear from the consultant when they come to the next meeting about some new laws that are going to take effect next year, but that's about the laws applicable to creating the districts. So, I mean, things do change. As of a few years ago, there's now a requirement that every 10 years when the census comes out, you have to look at your maps and see if they're still balanced or if you have to rebalance them. So it is an evolving area of law, so it could change.
And so presumably then, if that law changed, the council at that time
Could rescind the ordinance.
could rescind the ordinance, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, at this point,
No.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, one other question. I'm assuming these numbers are correct here. We're talking about the number of cities in California. It says approximately 185 of California's 482 cities now are using districts.
So that information is from a league handout from 2019. So I'm sure there's more now, but that was the most recent information we could find.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. And sorry, just a follow-up question on that. Made me think of it, Carrie. 400 other California jurisdictions. So we're talking school boards, counties,
Yeah.
other jurisdictions other than cities.
Right, all kinds
Okay.
of public agencies.
Public agencies.
Because some people, there are 2 attorneys who kind of go like county by county and get the cities, and then they send these letters to the cities, and then the healthcare districts, and then the school districts, and like public agency by public agency.
I have a question related to that, because last time we were worried we were going to get hit with this, and the attorney skipped over us. Why do you think he skipped over us?
Well, so what the mayor's alluding to is 3 or 4 years ago, one of the most well-known attorneys who sends those letters pretty much peppered Ventura County and got most of the public agencies, including my Park and Rec district, and skipped over Fillmore. And I do think it's because they looked at our numbers and saw that we had 85% of the the population is minority, and also that when you look at the last 10 or 15 years on the council, when you just look at the names, which is how they do the initial glance, when you look at the surnames of the people elected, there are plenty of people with minority last names, and so they assumed that what the CVRA was trying to achieve was already happening naturally here, and that the minorities were getting the opportunity to represent the residents, and so we didn't need voting districts to allow that to happen.
I feel like we're in a rock and a hard place.
That's the perfect
Yeah.
analogy.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to call up public speakers. Don Maroney. Oops, I got to reset it. I already started the clock on you.
I saw that.
I was shooting. Poof. Now we'll go.
No, I appreciate you guys opening us for public comments. This is really upsetting because I feel like it's almost like we're being terrorized by a terrorist and we have to concede. And this is supposed to be like the last small town, the greatest small town. And I like knowing people from all over Fillmore. And if I've got a friend that lives on the other side of Fillmore that's running, I want to be able to vote for that person. I also think it's crazy that no matter what, we're out all this money. I mean, I live in the Bridges. Since I've moved in there, the water fountains have never worked. We don't have the money. I don't know what the situation is, but the water doesn't work going in there. It looks janky, and yet we're going to spend money to redistrict when, as you guys are saying, we may not have people to even run in certain districts. I mean, I could almost say, okay, if you were going to divide Fillmore in 2, and have 2 candidates from each district and then do a mayor. That would make more sense because at least we'd have more people to pull from. But this really breaks my heart that we're in this position, and I really hope that we fight it. I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but I hope that's the direction it goes. And that's really, I didn't need all that time. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you guys all for your consideration.
And thank you. And if you want to know about the fountain, you can reach out to that man right there.
Well, I want to know. Thank you.
Next speaker is Rhonda Taylor.
Good evening, Mayor and everybody else. Mr. Gorola, just want to say thank you. It's good to see your face. I want to say thank you for your service to our country. We really appreciate it, but glad to see you sitting there instead of just listening to your voice. Some of the things that I'm going to say tonight, you've already been talking about, but here's what I wrote. A Fillmore citizen claiming to be a member of a protected class and also a registered voter says that the at-large election system presently in place violates the California Voting Rights Act. So I asked myself, what is a protected class according to our Fillmore population? So I found this in the dictionary. A protected class is a group of people sharing a common trait who are legally protected from being discriminated against on the basis of that trait. So the examples that they listed are, the first one was race and national origin, which are, and what the attorney said, the common traits in this type of lawsuit or issue. Here in Fillmore, 70% plus of our population is Hispanic. Our city council is 60% Hispanic. And forgive me for making generalities, but I just have to kind of look at percentages. Other examples are sex. Our council has 3 males, 2 females. Religious beliefs. This trait is currently being trampled upon by our society today, so not sure if that would apply. Age, 40 years and up. I think everybody in here, except for 2 or 3 people, are 40 plus. So marital status, including same-sex marriage, sexual orientation and gender identity, citizenship, and disability. Those are the different protected classes that I could find. So then I asked myself, what would be the benefits of changing? I don't know any, but still wanted to know what it is. How will we know after the change, if we decided to change to districts, that it will be a win or not for the lawsuit? How will we measure the outcome of this change of our election process? I'm a retired teacher, so I have to measure outcomes. So how do we measure outcomes for what we vote on and what we spend our money on? I don't see a way that it could be measured. Are there districts with low voter registrations right now as we stand? So if we decide to have this little area over here as a district, how many people are already registered to vote right now? Just thinking about that. So this is my question to our citizen of Fillmore. Why, oh citizen of Fillmore, are you causing our beautiful city to spend our tax dollars so foolishly?
Rhonda, you need to wrap it up.
The least amount of money that will be required is 42 plus 30. What a waste of our money. Thank you.
Next speaker is Diane Sutton.
Well, mine's not a beautiful narrative like that. I just did a point list.
I already
but she
started your clock,
started
too.
my clock. What is? Okay. Well, ditto with what
Ready?
Rhonda said, but I have to read mine. It's a point list, and it is great to see you, Chris, and the rest of you, of course. First, this would cost Fillmore initially to redistrict, as Miss Israel said, $42,000 plus a $30,000 attorney fee for the plaintiff, as I understand it. Seems like a form of extortion. And with a districting, with With a districting representation, it becomes easy for gerrymandering the district to make it easier to change the majority voting representation for either side. There's an app called Democracy Roulette that shows several scenarios where votes are impacted based on the outlining of the districts. With an at-large election, Fillmore citizens have 5 options to go to when an issue needs to be addressed. With districting, citizens only have 1. What if a council member in District 1 is more sympathetic than the council member in District 5 where you live? Citizens are locked into their one option. In our small town of Fillmore, citizens still can approach a like-minded council member to weigh their issues and vent their concerns. It can't get better than that. As a female Christian, I am a protected class, a registered voter. I am asking Mr. Mayor for a pause in signing this resolution to have time to educate the citizenry and find out how they feel about this strong arming and if they feel underrepresented. This will require a referendum on our ballot and or petitioning of our citizens. Why should one person be able to extort our city for his or her own personal gain? Because this isn't just about unrepresentation. We also need to investigate how this has played out in other cities that have had this forced on them, like Ojai and Santa Paula. Because once in place, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to transition back. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Sutton?
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, Mr. Mayor, I have a little stream of consciousness. I don't have it as well prepared as my wife, but we'll start here. One of the reasons why I love Fillmore so much is the overall unity of the citizens of Fillmore. We have a large ethnic population and have enjoyed good relations with everyone in town for 30 years of our family being here. As this relates to redistricting of elections, one needs to look at this from a common sense point of view. Look at the distribution of ethnicity in our town. In the past voting rights arena, there has been discrimination against people of color, and whites have been blamed for this discrimination. But this has shifted, as shown in the latest federal census for Fillmore, to 71% Hispanic and 22% white. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that contrast in population with these two ethnic groups tells me that one group has a significant amount more political power than the other group, and actualized can achieve any outcome that the group conceives. To me, this makes the creation of voting districts irrelevant in Fillmore. The eagerness of wanting districting may indicate another agenda that has nothing to do with ethnic population. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Annette Sula.
Hello, everybody. I only found out about this very recently, and I'm very, very upset. And the reason why I'm upset is I feel that we are being bullied, that we are being told that our city is going to be destroyed if we fight this, and our city is going to probably be destroyed if we don't fight this. I grew up in New York City. The first thing I learned as a child was you always stand up to bullies. You never let a bully, because once you let a bully rule you, they will rule you for the rest of your life. Obviously, we are being bullied as a city. There is nothing wrong with our districting. We are one community. I often tell people that my neighbors know what I had for breakfast before lunch. You know, we care about each other. We know each other. A new person moves into the community, we embrace them, and we bring them in. All this will go away if we start dividing us, if we let this divide us. So I'm asking, please, fight this. If we fight this, we may lose. But if we don't fight it, we've lost already.
Last speaker is Mary Bennett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm taking my comments from a couple emails I received. Currently, every Fillmore citizen votes for who will occupy every seat on the council. If changed, then every citizen has only a say on who occupies one seat. District voting like this makes it a simple matter for negative influences to seize control of the council. The City of Santa Monica was sued by a nonprofit, Pico Neighborhood Association, for failing to have at-large voting. The city was sued in 2016 for violating the CVRA. In 2019, the court issued a judgment in favor of the Pico Neighborhood Association, which the city appealed. The Court of Appeal ruled in favor of Santa Monica. In August 2023, the California Supreme Court returned the case to the Court of Appeals for further proceedings relating to determining if Pico was able to establish that at-large elections dilute their ability to elect their preferred candidate and that there exists racially polarized voting. At this time, the matter has not been taken up by the Court of Appeals. Please note that Pico needed to show that quote, racially polarized, unquote, voting exists in Santa Monica. A, quote, protected class, unquote, in California states no one can be discriminated against, etc. So actually, every individual in this state, county, and city is a protected class. I think it's really something that one unnamed individual is bullying the city. This is another way to control the council and the city. I ask that Fillmore will do what Santa Monica did and fight the lawsuit. Let's spend that money fighting this like Santa Monica. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for discussion with council. I have one question. It relates to what Diane Sutton referred to as a referendum. We can't do that, or we can?
We would need to ask the person who sent us the letter to sign a settlement agreement with us, and we would have to agree to pay the $34,000 or so and put it to the voters. But then if the voters did not approve it, then we would be sued.
So we're back to, it's not the city's choice. We're handcuffed.
Kind of.
One question I do have about the legality of a resolution of intention.
Mm-hmm.
To me, sounds like just that, an intent. And should we discover that along the way that the demographics don't line up, that whole process doesn't fit, which we may have presumptions, but this is the process that would confirm that. Should then the council not pass an ordinance, then it would just kind of resume as if we hadn't adopted the resolution in the first place.
Exactly.
But that gives us that 90 days to make all those considerations and actually study and notify the public, which is the proposed plan during that process is what, right. The intention doesn't lock us into the district voting until it becomes ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
So we could go through this whole process and not even pass the ordinance if things were to change.
Or if things were to change, or if a majority of you can't agree on which map is the correct map. I mean, there are...
But then we'll still get sued.
Right, yeah.
I think a big part of it, though, is that
This isn't
the
brought
public
down.
gives you, or this is the
Right.
time for the public to provide their inputs
Right.
on the process, on the situation in the first place. You know,
Right.
those that knew about it today had their opportunity to come speak, but now those that maybe didn't know.
No, we'll get to
will-
come in.
will have time for
5
that to
public
happen.
hearings.
To move to that, you know, hey, what's the actual strategy and what does the puzzle look like? And does it fit?
I understand that.
In my opinion, that portion of it alone is worth the cost because we get the information that we're searching for with still the ability to make a decision. Whereas if we made the decision now, we would be out that money anyway, or at least a portion of it. That's the upside.
Tiffany, the $2 amounts we're talking about, 34,000, and that's mandated by the CVRA, right?
Yes, so the CVRA, at the time it was adopted, set the dollar amount to the person who sends the demand at $30,000, but then there's a CPI. So we will have to calculate it if this is adopted tonight, and we'll let the council know what the exact number is, but it should be in the range of $34,000 now.
Okay, and then the 42,000 is what we would pay for the consultant.
The consultant to help draw them a legally compliant map. But the first item though is just authorizing that appropriation. The next item we'll have will be to
Right,
consider
right.
that actual contract.
Right. And then with regard to the other cities in our county, I'm thinking of Ojai as an example, which predominantly is probably 90% non-minority, they're Caucasian. Are there any, or Ojai or any of the other cities, I know that they haven't filed, or they've caved, essentially, every one of them. No one's fought the battle. Or was there any at all?
I think there's one city, but they were skipped. There was just an article when the California Supreme Court made its decision, the Santa Monica case, sending the case back to the Court of Appeal that I mentioned earlier. The Ventura Star had an article
That's what
about
started all
and
this.
said that Fort Hueneme and Fillmore were the only cities in the
Right.
county
Mm-hmm.
that hadn't switched to districts, and that was on a Saturday, and then on Monday we got the letter.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard if Hueneme got the letter too or not. But probably.
And is there any way to gauge what a lawsuit, if we stood our ground on this, what a lawsuit would cost us?
So part of the problem that I've discovered when I've been dealing with this situation for other clients is that, because they're only entitled up to the $30,000 if they've incurred those costs. And so if I let them know we adopt the resolution of intention, I'll say, show me what you've spent. And although like we're gonna hire a demographer for a certain amount, they'll be like, oh, the demographer was, 5 times as much, and they'll say, oh, and we bill, this is specialty work, so we bill at $1,000 an hour, and so that letter that is looks like a form letter that probably my secretary put together, that took $25,000, and so that's part of the problem, and why these cases are so expensive is because they say, oh, well, to file the lawsuit against you, which is probably the same lawsuit they've used 100 times, they'll say that alone was $100,000. So if you want to settle right after after they filed the complaint before you even file an answer, they'll say that's $250,000 because they've already spent so much money, researching it and drawing the complaint. And then at that point, you're sort of over a barrel. And how do you get a judge to say that that's not true, and to try and wind those dollars back?
But we wouldn't be liable for those dollars if we won the case. We're not
But again, no one has won one of
The
these
case.
cases in California yet. No public enemy. And Santa Monica has spent, when I talked to the Santa Monica attorney, it was probably 3 years ago when my Parks and Rec district got sued. They had already spent over $20 million. And that was before the oral arguments and further briefing at the Supreme Court. And now it's been remanded to the trial, to the Court of Appeals, and it's supposed to go back to trial court, so it's essentially uncharted. So it's a matter of how much, I think Palmdale spent something like $6 million and now settling before trial. I mean, they claim exorbitant amounts of money and billing at really high rates, and courts don't usually get into the weeds on attorney fees like that. And they'll say if your rate's $1,000 or $1,200 an hour, that's your rate, and you say you spent those hours, and so I'm going to believe you.
I think what we're up against here is something that a small community like Fillmore and a council like ours, with a budget that we have in the city of Fillmore, we're not going to be the ones that are going to be able to fix this. This is going to have to come from the community overall. It's going to have to come from us making phone calls, calling our representatives at the state level, and getting this changed. This, who used the word extortion earlier? I mean, that to me, that describes it perfectly. And I don't want to expend the funds that we just don't have. I mean, I think about what a lawsuit like that would cost us, and we just don't have it. We would have to sacrifice so much. It would be, would it be worth the sacrifice we would make, losing our parks, losing, some of the programs that we have, just so many things that we have, and that we've been moving forward on year by year by year. And I think we would have to say goodbye to the progress that we've made to take on this challenge, because I don't think we can do it from this dais. And I think it has to go to our state representatives. We have to have legislation to counter the CVRA and change things. And we have motivated people in Fillmore. Would love seeing the people that come up and speak on some of these hot button issues that are here over and over and over again. I don't want to point my finger at all the ones that have spoken tonight, because you guys make things happen, and we appreciate you being here and doing that. It infuriates me, and if anybody wants to run with this as far as fighting it from a community standpoint, a county standpoint, gathering other cities in the community to do it, I'm tired of rolling over. I'm tired of caving to what's happening and what we're mandated to do from a government that just is so out of touch with communities like ours. So, my 2 cents.
Very well said, Ms. Brody.
All right, one more question for you, Tiffany, and that's on, you explained was the high billing rates and such a cost, but also, like, if it's gotten into the nitty-gritty of countering the request. I mean, communities haven't won is it because of all of these costs and just not taking it on, or those that have tried, has it just been determined that there's a certain threshold of data in terms of what the California Voting Rights Act and the communities don't measure up to get to having it?
So that's a good question. A lot of them are because it's a gray area about whether there's racially polarized voting that can be resolved by establishing districts. A lot of these voting consultants are able to create a district, and like the Santa Monica case and some of the data that was read, I think they were able to create a district where there was like 26% or something, so they couldn't make a majority minority district. And so the question is what's the gray area? That's what most of them that I'm aware of that have gone forward are arguing, is that we couldn't fix the problem, and so why make us go to districts when we don't choose to do that? And so the cases I've seen have all had something in the low to mid 20s percentages, and the consultant will do a much better job explaining all of this next week about all of that. But that's the situation, is whether it's a gray area, and there just isn't a lot of published law on where the hard and fast threshold is if you're here, you have to, versus there, you don't have to. But as Councilmember Gurula pointed out, this is just a starting off point, saying that we're gonna go down this path and see what's what, but nothing's irrevocable.
Okay, with that, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll make that motion. That the City Council approve Resolution 23-3964, the intent to transition from at-large to district-based elections pursuant to Election Code Section 110, and authorizing the appropriation of $42,000 from General Fund Reserve to account, to read it, the account number 101-4103-0021-245, City Clerk Contract Services.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Georgie, will you take a roll call?
Councilmember Gurula,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Villaseñor,
Yes.
Mayor Austin,
No.
Councilmember Brogy,
Yes.
Councilmember Mendez.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We'll move on to item number 9B, consideration and approval of contract with National Demographics Corporation, professional demographic services to assist with the city's transition to by-district county elections in the amount of not to exceed of $42,000.
Mayor and Council, I'm also going to present this, and this is the contract for the consultant that we've been referencing that will explain this process and the considerations for drawing the districts to make sure that if the council does adopt a map, that it is legally defensible and appropriate, considering all of the applicable federal and state laws for voting rights. And so National Demographics Corporation is considered the premier consultants in this field. If a lot of our clients tried to use them during the redistricting that just happened after the census, and they were so busy they couldn't retain them. So in one sense, we're a little bit fortunate with the timing of this, that they do have time right now and are able to help us, and they will do a great job of explaining to the council and to staff and the public what's required, what needs to be considered, and how to appropriately and legally draw the boundaries of the map. There are lots of different rules in federal and state law. The state laws are more comprehensive and strict, but we do need to comply with both. So there's a contract attached to the staff report that goes through everything that needs to be complied with, from considering the population to the demographics, geographic criteria required by federal and state law to make sure that there's a roughly equal population in the different districts, and try to prevent dividing neighborhoods, and looking at geographic and other barriers to try and keep communities within the same district and sufficiently compact to the extent that you can. So there are a lot of criteria that are involved in evaluating and developing the maps, and this consultant will be really helpful in making sure that you all navigate that process to the best of your ability.
Okay, is there any questions for Tiffany?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
Tiffany, can you be a little bit more specific or provide details where it says that they will also provide assistance with public outreach and public participation? What does that look like?
Well, they'll work with staff. Part of it is we'll need to make sure we have translators. They'll remind staff what all the requirements are about the public hearings, because when you get in the process and you're trying to stay within the 90-day window, there are all these special rules, like I alluded to earlier, like the first 2 hearings have to happen within 30 days. And then once you start looking at maps, that has to happen with 45 days, even though you in theory have 90 days. And anytime you're going to consider maps, they have to have been posted at least 7 days in advance. So they help coordinate and remind us of all of those deadlines as we're going through this process, to make sure that we comply with the due process and hit all of those requirements so that we can stay on track.
Because what I'm thinking is, I think it's going to be really, really helpful for us to have as much of the community involvement in this as we move forward, regardless of what the outcome is. So I want to make sure that we have as many members of the public here participating in this process as possible. And going back to what I stated earlier in my tirade there, can we, at public hearings, if we're not specifically just talking about the maps themselves, I'm assuming they'll be educating the public about the whole process, not just talking about how do we map this out.
Yeah, the first two, we're not allowed to have any maps.
Oh, okay,
so there
good.
won't be any maps. The first two will
Okay.
only be educating people about the whole process and what to consider.
Okay, then what I would like to do, as long as we can be assured that the outreach to the public is going to be intensive, that we'll get as many people here as possible, and I have to ask all of you in the room today, we got to make that happen. I want to have elected officials here as well, our state elected officials here, if we can get them here. And I'm game to do that.
To encourage maximum participation, I had questions. We're looking at a potential schedule of all the Tuesdays in the month of November. The school district also has their meetings on like alternating Tuesdays. Is there leeway to be able to move that so that we can allow for or presumably allow for those that regularly attend school board meetings to be able to attend this as well?
Yeah, I think, so the first public hearing's at our next regular meeting on the 24th. Then the second public hearing is on the October 26th, so that's a Thursday. And then November, I think some of the milestones you're seeing are posting public hearing notices and things like that. They're not meetings, but there's those dates of the Tuesdays, so that could be a little confusing.
Okay.
So then the third public hearing would be on our regular meeting in November. And then,
Okay, I see that now, yep.
yeah, no, it's very confusing. There's
Yeah.
so much information.
Yep, I was just going off the
there.
dates.
Yeah.
Any other
So,
questions?
sorry, just to clarify then, for those here and listening in, it looks like only a Thursday, October 26th is the only public hearing regarding the maps that will happen outside of our regular council meetings on the second or fourth Tuesday.
Right, because the November 28th one is usually canceled because of Thanksgiving. So that'll be a special meeting, but
Okay.
we're going
It's
to
okay.
have that so that we can get it
Yeah.
in. But some of the laws change January 1st. So even though our 90 days would allow us to go into January a little bit, it would be preferable to get it done this year if we could.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion.
If I could, Mayor, just a comment. I know this whole process, we've heard public comment, can be a little disheartening. I was encouraged by my son actually earlier today, dropping him off at football practice, and we were just driving along the bike path and on Old Telegraph, and he just said, "I feel like I've seen everyone." I didn't know what he meant. I was trying to figure it out, and then I just asked him a simple question. Do you mean that you feel like you recognize people? And he said, yeah, I feel like I really like growing up here because like you feel like you know everyone. Now he can't claim to really be from here because he was born in Colorado, so that's his loss. But I will say that my opinions do not necessarily reflect the Air National Guard, the federal government, or the United States Air Force, or the Department of Defense. But I think when we're faced with a challenge, especially in some ways it feels kind of adversarial, right? That if you feel like you're being bullied, oftentimes it's better to understand their maneuvers, to understand, hey, what are they trying to get at, or like what's the point, right? And so that's hopefully what this process would establish, so that we can take advantage of that. What my son recognized, he's only lived here for 4 years now. We can really take advantage of that, but it will take like the political will of Fillmore to do that. So this is our opportunity to explore that, and I really hope that we do pull out of this, and hopefully this money is well spent going down that path.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll make that motion. Show on the right page. I make a motion that City Council approves a contract with the National Demographics Corporation, NDC, in a form approved by City Attorney for professional demographer services to assist with the city's transition to by-district City Council elections in an amount not to exceed $42,000, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 9C, approval agreement for purchase and sale of Equestrian Center property, 308 Chambersburg.
Mayor and council members, I'm presenting this item again. New topic, though. Moving on. And I apologize, the title on this is missing a few words. This is approving the First Amendment to the purchase and sale agreement. In August, the council previously approved the actual purchase and sale agreement to sell the property. But we realized as we were going through escrow that there's an agreement with the roping club that pertains to the property, and we wanted to prepare a First Amendment to the purchase and sale agreement to have the buyers formally acknowledge that, so that it is part of the agreement and that that's them accepting the assignment of that agreement to them, which means they'll honor its terms through its terms. So that's all this item is a little bit of housekeeping to add that bit. And once, if this is approved tonight, once that's done, we should be very close to escrow closing.
Okay, any questions for Tiffany? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
All right, I'll make that motion that City Council approve the First Amendment to the agreement for purchase and sale of real property and joint escrow instructions between this. Oh,
I have a motion.
Go ahead.
Did you finish?
I think I did. Between the city and seller and Mario Robledo and Vanessa Garcia.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Moving on to item number 9D, consideration of a request for a third amendment to the property remediation agreement for 401 Central Avenue, development permit 21-02 and conditional use permit 21-02.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Community of Fillmore. This item is for the consideration, as Mark mentioned, of the third amendment to the remediation agreement between the city and the operator at 461 Central Avenue. You entered into this remediation agreement back in May of 2021, and the remediation agreement allowed this property owner to operate the facility as a banquet, hosting weddings and other special events through the course of temporary use permits and a phasing plan. We've had 2 time extensions of that remediation agreement prior to this one. The last one was in April. We had 2 items that were still outstanding. One of those was to install the street benches, the iron benches and the waste bins. And the other was to underground a utility line that sits situated on the south side of the property, and removal of a pole that's at the corner of the Kensington and the alley. The street benches you may have seen have been installed. I included some photos in your packet there. They look great. We're down to 1 item now. We're getting there.
Finish line.
Yeah, and this extension is not all on the property owner. I was also responsible for this delay because I've been trying to expand the scope of work a bit to capture sort of a domino effect of replacing maybe 3 more lights on Central Avenue, but I wasn't able to make that stretch. So we're back to just the 1 on Kensington, and it'll be a Fillmorean, like you've seen the decorative one there, and it will underground a line to the pole that's at the corner of Central and Kensington. So they are working their way through. It's with Edison at this point, and hopefully within the next year we'll be totally complete. Staff's recommendation is to approve the third amendment to the property remediation agreement with 461 Central LLC to extend the condition of approval completion deadline to October 20th, 2024.
Okay. Any questions for Ryan? Huh?
Today's the 10th, so it's due to expire on the 20th in 10 days, so this would grant them 1 full year.
You think you can get it done?
It's in Edison's court.
That's why I'm asking you, do you think you can get it done?
I think so, yeah. I'm the eternal optimist here. I'm going to say yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a chance that when Edison comes to do those things, they can also upgrade our lights for our Christmas decorations?
We can definitely ask.
Tap them
yeah.
while they're in
You
town.
want to do a 2-for-1 deal?
Yeah,
Yeah. We can put in a work order for that, see how that goes.
if it was already in the process. I think we already
Yeah.
discussed that.
Yeah. Yeah, we are working on with Edison on another undergrounding project, actually. I'll update you guys on pretty soon.
Okay. Any other, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. I know you had mentioned about the trying to get 3, but only able to get 1.
Yeah.
Is that an Edison call? Is it it's just, you don't have to go into details, but it's just not possible to do that.
Yeah, what I looked at was, because there's a pole at the corner of Kensington and Central, and if we underground to this pole, we would have to put a riser in it, bring it up to the pole, and then bring it overhead across Central to 3 other poles. But if we replace the pole on the corner of Sespe, on the corner of Kensington and Central, it would be on the city's dime. It's not in the applicant's permit. So we got into this, well, how much would it cost? And we couldn't get a good cost estimate out of Edison, but we did look at like a 2/3, 5/3 split partnership between us and the applicant to do 5 poles, and came up with kind of got close in costs, but the process with Edison got a little bit complicated between what rule would apply and how that work would get accomplished, and we figured we'll just cut bait at this point and get this done.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure.
And that'll wrap up everything for them.
They'll be totally done.
Okay.
And then, yep.
That'll be good.
Okay.
Yep.
What's
Any
this
other
one,
questions?
another 8-year project?
This one was only
6?
Well, May of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. They have their entitlements and they've got all their building permits, and go in and take a look. It looks beautiful.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move that the City Council approve the 3rd Amendment to Property Remediation Agreement with 461 Central LLC to extend the conditions of approval of the completion deadline to October 20th, 2024.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 10, committee, commission, and board reports. Open up to council.
Yeah. I attended the VCTC of Ventura County Transportation Commission meeting last Friday, and the topic of the Sierra Northern Railroad, as usual, was on the agenda. And I was really thrilled that we had more people from Fillmore come out. And these meetings, the VCTC meetings, are held in Camarillo City Hall. So I'm always happy to see that we have representation from the Fillmore community. They schlep over Grimes Canyon for these meetings, and the work that their comments are being listened to by the entire commission. And the commission is made up of council members, all of the board of supervisors, so it's a very large council, and so they have the ear of all of these people, our Fillmore citizens do, about the issues that we're dealing with here. So I did share, or the agenda item that was up this past was just an update on what progress had been made. Small stepping stones were we're getting more compliance from Sierra Northern than we had in the past, which is good. The downside is that the stored rail cars are going to remain there for quite a while longer. There's still no end in sight on that issue. But I encourage anybody who has an interest in the whole topic to go out to these VCTC meetings and hear what's going on. So let's see, so that was a VCTC, and then we had another meeting earlier today. Do you want to give an update on that one, Christina?
Oh, on our ad hoc meeting.
Yeah, our ad hoc.
Okay. I was thinking about what meeting. Sure. So today, Councilmember Carrie Brogy and we are part of the Utility Ad Hoc Committee, and we met and had sort of a further presentation about a move in the city to go forward with a new metering process, a totally automated process. It was very good, and we're going to bring this back to council to bring this forward.
Anything else?
Just a question on that. Was that, you're talking about water metering, the?
Water metering,
Yeah.
yes. Sorry about that. Yes,
That's
water
okay.
metering.
Anything else? Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to City Manager. City Manager verbal report.
Just one thing, you're starting to hear horns blowing around town right now. Sierra's moving their trains around, and when they get close to the intersections, they're blowing them according to federal regulations. I'll just leave it at that. But just so everybody knows that they're moving the trains around, that's why you hear a lot of horns going on, and we have no control over the hours or the length of their horns. So if you do have an issue with that, please contact the VCTC and let them know about the issue.
Okay. And with that, I'm going to adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting at 6:30 on Tuesday, November 24th, 2023. Meeting adjourned.